Welcome to probably the best fitness and nutrition podcast. I'm Bradley Schneller, owner of Stacked Coaching, and I have with us today our Director of Fitness, Dr. Maysa Hannawi, also owner of IBX. In today's episode, we give you a few easy tips to progress off that rower and back to running while decreasing knee, ankle, hip, lower back pain. We also discuss with us Maysa's journey from her torn MCL recovery and getting back into competing in CrossFit. Check us out on Instagram at Stacked Coaching. And for all of your fitness and nutrition needs, go to www.stackedcoaching.com. A fitness revolution is coming. Hey, what's up, everybody? We are back with Stacked Coaching Director of Fitness and owner of In the Box PT. No, not In the Box PT, just In the Box programming, PT, all the stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Maysa Hannawi. Again, I said it right.
Kind of, halfway.
Well, I'll get there one of these days. So
Not as different as it seems.
So Maysa and I wanted to start a series of podcasts on common struggles in the gym and simple steps you can take to start to improve. Now, obviously, if you need additional help, you know where to find it. But here are some simple steps you can take on your own to get going. So Maysa, one of the things, and we'll just get right to the point. We see this all the time. You and I talk about all this time. A lot of people talk about it on the internet. No one knows what to do about it, but it's the people that constantly have to be on the rower because they can't run.
Yeah. So let me preface with saying, if you're having, typically it's knee pain, maybe hip pain with running, in the moment, it is a good modification to either bike or row, just in class, to not exacerbate or irritate it. The reason being, running is a lot more impact. Like, some science shows that when you run, you put 6 times your body weight and force in your joints, hips, knees, ankles. So if you're having instability, if one side is weaker, which is a lot of the things we're testing when we're doing one-on-one program, that strength balance, that knee, hip, and ankle stability, you're going to potentially have pain while running because it's higher impact. Things like running, jumping, maybe single unders, double unders are going to irritate you. But if you hop on the bike or the rower for that workout and then never figure out the reason behind why you're experiencing pain, you're going to stay on the bike or the rower for the rest of time. And likely other movements that are less high impact will start to affect it as it gets worse. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is there ever a reason why someone should never have the ability to run?
No, not really. I mean, there might be a 0.0001% that's something, but not that I know of. And I typically, anyone who tells you just don't do X for the rest of time is wrong. There will be times where you need to eliminate movements to reduce inflammation while you're building something back up. But if there's something you want to do, especially something like running, which we are all 100% made to do, you can get back to it. If you do have some sort of tendonitis or something that's really acutely inflamed, you might want to lay off of it while you're addressing that inflammation and that instability, and then work it back in. But no, definitely everyone should be able to run.
Yeah. So you heard it, guys. In the moment, modification, rowing is fine. If it is a constant struggle and you're constantly find yourself on the rower, you may want to seek additional help or attempt to do what we're about to talk about, because the podcast isn't over yet.
But yeah, also I think, like, with rowing, even more so than biking, there is an impact in rowing. It's horizontal, so it's not going to be as much as running, but you do have a push off, you do have an explosive power. So at some point, if you have something wrong, rowing is also going to irritate it. At some point, lifting is also going to irritate it. So again, like, just choosing to row instead of run, because running hurts. I've never wanted to do running. In the long term, you're probably hurting yourself more if you just continue to modify.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but we talk about, you and I have talked about load versus capacity before. I've talked about load versus capacity. And if you are rowing every single time we are supposed to be running, you are just putting more squat patterns into your weekly program, correct?
100%. And like going off of load versus capacity one, like you said, you might be overdoing it with a different pattern then. And at the same time, it's usually never one thing. Like people will be like, every time I run, it hurts. So it must be running. With the load versus capacity model, what we know is there's so many factors that go into pain. It's how you, did I just cut out?
Yeah, you're good. Keep it going.
It's how you sleep. It's how your stress is, what you're doing at work, how you're fueling your body. So maybe there's all these added things that are happening in your life. And then you step into the gym and you go for a run and you're like, running is the thing. When actually you could have had a day where you slept better, fueled your body better, had less stress throughout your day and ran and not had any problems. So that's where it's really important to, if you are experiencing pain or limitations, get a full assessment. And especially with you and me and a lot of good coaches, they're looking at those lifestyle factors. They're looking at how you're sleeping, what your diet looks like, what your stress management is. Because honestly, it's almost never one thing that's causing pain.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on it briefly before, but what are some of the more common things that might shift a person from running to rowing, where they often find themselves on the rower?
It's typically knee pain, and that might shift them from running to the bike, maybe the rower.
I always like to put people on the bike in the moment rather than the rowing, because I feel like it's better for our knees. Am I right? Wrong there?
It's not better or worse, but it's definitely less stress on the knees because you're not doing as much flexion, as much range of motion. The range of motion you need to do a full revolution on the bike is honestly not that much. Most people can do that. But it is, stress is a good thing. We do want to stress our joints. We do want to load them. It's just in a moment where someone's experiencing pain, you might want to deload them. So yes, my go-to is usually the bike, depending on what's causing it. If running is bothering someone's, shoulder from swinging their arm, maybe you're not going to, which is the thing, maybe you're not going to put them on a rower. It just kind of obviously depends on the situation. But typically, I feel like the reasons people don't run is knee pain, hip pain, sometimes back pain because the impact of it. And with back pain, you might not want to put them on a rower because it is a lot of flexion extension. But it's usually the impact of hitting the ground repeatedly with running. But that's where, again, like you need to assess someone what might be causing their pain while they're running.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. What about shin splints?
What about them?
I see people more often than not with shin splints or shin pain. Typically, I've seen in the past that being more of a would it be shortness of the muscle, or what would you say?
Like shin splints you're going to see from overuse. So someone's doing way too much, which you own a functional fitness gym and in CrossFit functional fitness world, that is unfortunately a trend of overtraining. You see it a lot in people. There are a lot of athletes that are running outside of their daily workouts. Running is the easiest, most accessible form of exercise. You step out the door, you go for a run. They're probably not warming up appropriately. They might not have the ankle stability, the knee stability. Like I said at the beginning, you're putting a ton of force every time you step in a run. Also, running is a single leg sport, which people find very confusing when you first think about it, but you're literally never on two legs when you're running, especially if you're running somewhat fast. So most people, if they've never been assessed, do have a stronger side, do have some instabilities. If you just up and run, it sounds like this great thing to do because it's really easy and really accessible, but your body might not be, have the prerequisite strength or stability to keep increasing your running volume. And then on top of that, in a functional fitness gym, we are doing rowing, which is pushing off box jumps, double unders. Anytime you're doing like Olympic lifts, you're doing explosive jump like movements, people are going to get shin splints purely by overuse. It's why I love individualized programming and having, whether that supplements group class or that's all you do, because it's going to attack your specific weaknesses. And it's going to make sure you have the prerequisite strength. So if I go into a gym and there's 5 400-meter runs in the workout, maybe I'm only adequately prepared in my body's for 2 400-meter runs. But you don't really know that unless you've been assessed until after the fact, and then your shins start to hurt and you're like, oh, it must be running. You know,
Yeah, totally. All right. What are like some simple things people could attempt on their own to try to progress off the rower? I mean,
I think of, oh, go ahead, go
yeah,
ahead.
I was gonna say we established that if you find yourself on the rower often, personalized program would probably be the best thing to do to progress towards running. But if someone wanted to try some stuff on their own, what options could they take and where would they start?
So regardless of what level you're at, anything during the assessment phase of a one-on-one client, I'm making everyone do some variation of a step up and testing, whether that's weighted, without weight, some single leg step up. Usually people can step up, like I'll have them build to a heavy 5, even if that's just using their body weight. People will have one leg that it's much easier to step up and step down on.
Mhm.
If you can, like 5 reps on one leg and 6 or 7 on the other, that might not be an issue. But if you're doing 5 reps on one leg and 10 to 12 on the other, you have a mass discrepancy in strength. And that's going to show that you need to kind of balance that out before you're trying to go add impact or load. So I really like testing single leg strength. You can even do that with a lateral or side step down off a box. Do a couple reps on each side. You'll be able to see like it's way easier on one knee. One knee is a lot more unstable. So just testing single leg strength is one of the low hanging fruit that I make everybody do.
Yeah, so real quick on that, because we talked about building up to a heavy 5 on each side with weight. If they can't do any weight in a box step up, would it be reps on each side, or how would they go about that?
Reps to failure on each side at a tolerable height box. Ideally, you want it to be at knee height, but some people can't obviously do that, especially if they're experiencing pain. So a height that's tolerable, see how many reps you can do with a controlled down on one side versus a controlled down on the other side.
Okay, all right, I like that. And so if they have established that there is an imbalance,
Mhm.
and someone again is attempting to do this on their own or extra work outside of the gym, they could just be looking at adding in single leg work, or would they substitute single leg work for bilateral movements? Which, guys, bilateral movements just means you're using 2 feet at one time, deadlift or squat.
Yeah, I would always say substitute, especially for someone that I haven't assessed, purely because if you're experiencing pain, it is a possibility that it's from overuse. So why would you add more when you're combating overuse? So if back squats or front squats or goblet squats are programmed, you might want to replace it with a goblet step up or a goblet reverse lunge, something where you're either using only one leg or biasing one leg and just splitting the reps. And you're always going to be limited by the weaker side, meaning you are lifting only as much weight as the weaker side can. So you're improving that imbalance.
Okay, I like it. All right. So step one, right? Like that's our first option right there. Are there any other options, or basically that is our main road to recovery on that?
That's the main road to recovery. I would obviously say see a coach and get assessed because, like we always say, the answer is it depends. It depends on what's causing it and what the issue is. And if you're someone who goes to group fitness, seeing someone for individualized programming will supplement group fitness. Doesn't have to take you away from it. It can actually make your experience in class better because you won't be in as much pain. You'll know what you need to do to modify in a way that you're working towards no longer having to modify.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I just thought of this. If someone is looking for a substitute in the moment for a run because whatever pain they might be experienced, would a weighted walk be appropriate? Maybe like a farmer's carry walk or something like that, or would you say nah?
I think it depends on what else is in the workout. So if they're going for a run and immediately coming back in and doing something grippy, I probably wouldn't do a weighted walk because it's going to affect the rest of it. If they're coming back in and loading their legs, doing some, step up, something like that. The idea with a run is you obviously want to get your heart rate up. You don't want to have a ton of so you want to make sure you're maintaining the stimulus. If it's a really short run, like a 100-meter sprint, you might just have them do, a 30-second all-out sprint on the bike. You're just trying to match whatever the stimulus of the workout is.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Outside of specific movement patterns to work on, are there any activation, stretching, movement things they should work on other than the progressive things that we just discussed?
So I think a lot of times, again, this is obviously an it depends answer,
Yeah,
but
always. There's 100 different options we could go here.
for sure. And people who experience pain anywhere typically tend to feel tightness, and they assume that they have limited range of motion or limited flexibility, which is not always the case. A lot of times when you feel pain, you're going to feel tight, and then people are going to stretch a ton. And that could totally not be what's happening. I would check your range of motion. You can ask your coach, you can ask someone in the gym how to appropriately check if you have knee flexion, knee extension, hip flexion, hip extension. If you have full range of motion, you probably do not need to waste your time stretching. You might just feel tight. Like that is a common sensation you feel in an irritated area, in an area where something's going on. So if you have a limitation in range of motion, yeah, sure, go ahead and do loaded mobility, work on stretching, but I would make sure that you actually have a limitation. That's what's contributing. Because a lot of people, I see it all the time, like, oh, my hamstrings feel so tight, but then you passively check them and their hamstrings have full range of motion. So making sure you're not, like, time is so valuable. If we're going to spend extra time in the gym, we don't want to waste it on stretching if we have full range of motion.
I love it. I love it. Anything else to add when it comes to rowing and running?
I don't think so. Do you have anything to add? What do you think is, I said, obviously strength and balances and checking single leg strength. Is there anything specific you would check if someone, is saying, I don't want to run because I'm experiencing knee pain or back pain?
Yeah, I mean, and the same thing goes for hips, the hip stuff, what would you work if it's a hip pain type of thing?
Well, definitely if they're having hip pain, rowing's probably not going to be a great modification because you're getting a ton of hip flexion, and that's typically what bothers it. Um, Most people who feel hip pain with running, with squatting, tend to think that they have limited hip flexion, which is usually not the case because you are in hip flexion in a lot of those movements. So if it was limited, you wouldn't be able to get to the bottom of a squat. So people who are feeling that kind of pinching pain in their hip with high impact, with squatting, maybe even with rowing, probably have some instability. Probably their knee or ankle is not working the way it should. So their hips having to take the brunt of it, or that quad on that side is a lot weaker. So what happens when you have a weaker side? Something's got to take up the slack. It's typically going to be your hip or your back compensating. So kind of goes back to assessing that right to left strength, top to bottom, and then obviously range of motion. But I don't find that it's very common that someone has extremely limited hip range of motion.
It seems like the answer to a lot of and again, it depends, right? But a lot of maybe pain or discomfort could lead back to some type of imbalance somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think we try to make things really complicated by saying, like, is it your labrum? Do you have an impingement? Do you have this? But the truth is, like, if you have a large imbalance and you continue to load that imbalance, it's going to create all of these symptoms that can easily be diagnosed as this fancy name or that fancy name. But, like, what does that really mean from a functional standpoint? I'd rather look at what is the easiest thing to fix, which is usually a weakness somewhere or a strength imbalance.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong here, but even with something like patella tendonitis,
Mhm.
I feel like that would come from an imbalance as well, right? With an overloading of one side, or no?
Yeah, usually people have some sort of tendonitis or acute inflammation because either they're weaker on that side, have a poor loading pattern, or excessively loading the same pattern over and over. So someone who may be squatting way more, like exceeding their capacity.
And rowing
Um,
in the day.
yeah, and I think we've said it before, like CrossFit in general is very squat heavy. There's so many movements that are squatting that we don't even think are squatting, like rowing, like box jump overs. So we tend to overload. Like, why do we see a lot of tendonitis or tendinopathies? Is we're overusing the same patterns thruster, squat cleans, like all of these things are a lot of below parallel knee flexion. So sometimes it is an imbalance. Sometimes it's just loading the same pattern repetitively. A lot of times it's a combination of both. So that's the thing too, like someone who's saying they're having pain with running, maybe it's not the running, it's the volume in which they're running. Maybe they need to do half rowing, half running and work into that volume of impact. So it just depends on their training history, their acute versus chronic load, what they've been doing for the last month or so, and then progressively in like 5% increments, increasing their load and capacity.
I love that. And just that, what you just said about the volume, okay, and incrementally increasing could go for any movement. I say that all the time. Like if there's 10 pull-ups written in sets and they're like, I can't do 10, so I'm just going to do like bandit or negatives or whatever. Like, can you do two? Do two.
Yeah.
Work your way up. Like just
yeah, and group programming so tough because it's these numbers they're using are for an average person, except you're not average, right? Everyone's a little bit different. So it's assuming a certain stimulus, which if you like, suppose there's 20 toes to bar in a workout. The idea might be like, you're going to do those in 2 sets, but what if you can only do 5 toes to bar? Like, then probably you should be doing 10. And that's where individualized programming is so cool. It's going to be right at your capacity, maybe push that limit a little bit. And because your coach is going to know, I'm going to know what your gymnastics look like. I'm going to know how much you can squat so I can challenge you appropriately. And that's where getting assessed whether or not you're going to do individual programming for the rest of the time is really useful, because you know your capacities and like what, if you can ask like, what is a stimulus? How many sets should I be doing this in? And then you know what that would be for you.
Yeah. In terms of people that go to the group class and, this is anyone involved in group fitness, what you should be hearing when Maysa and I are talking about this is if you don't know what your capacity is, but you do know that 20 seems like a lot, okay, and you can do 2 or 3 at a time. Well, the intent of any workout is for you not to stand on that under that bar and watch it for 4 minutes while you try to do 20 pull-ups. Like that is not the intent of any workout. And if you were in a group fitness class where you find yourself doing that, do less. And if the coach says, no, you need to stand under here and do all 20, find a new gym. Yeah, find a new coach or find a new gym, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have the autonomy of changing your workout. You're in charge of your workout. Just be smart about things. Like think like, should I be standing under here watching this this pull-up rig, So
yeah. Keep moving to have manageable sets that maybe is a little bit more than what you think you're capable of, but it definitely shouldn't be where you're like standing there for 45 seconds wondering if you're going to make a rep.
Yeah, exactly. All right, awesome. Maysa, you just finished a first CrossFit competition post your surgery. Can you tell everybody what happened?
I did tear my MCL, but I didn't have surgery.
Yeah, didn't have surgery. So you tore your MCL. How'd you tear it?
Surfing. Learning to surf. I don't know that I could qualify it as surfing just yet.
Like, how does that happen? Learning to surf, like you're on the board and your body just twists a certain way, or?
I was on the board and I fell off backwards, but my foot stayed on top of the board. So I fell in and it just bent my knee. This was second week of November, so we're about 10 weeks out. At this point, I had qualified for this competition. It's just a local one, nothing crazy, but I kind of used it as a motivation. I was like, if I can't do it, it's fine, but I'm going to do all my rehab stuff because I know it's coming. So it's good for me to kind of work that way. I did very consistent rehab, I will say, for the last 10 weeks, was super diligent. I think it was really good in showing me all of the things that I could do to maintain my fitness. And then all the things I couldn't do were just quote unquote rehab. So I maintained fitness in all the ways I could, with cardio, with loading my upper body, and that obviously helped my knee. The more blood flow, the more movement you do, it's going to be better. And then it also mentally, I just wasn't as defeated because I'm like, I'm still in the gym. I'm still getting a good workout in. I did a ton of bench press in the last 10 weeks.
So your upper body's jacked as fuck.
Yeah. So the competition came around. It was a lot of fun. I did what I could. I realized I was not in the shape I would have loved to be in if I could have squatted for the last 10 weeks, but I'm very happy that my body was able to do all of those things. So that was really cool. I feel like it was very eye-opening because we've had this conversation. I tore my ACL, MCL, meniscus, blew it out years ago, had to have surgery. It was pretty bad injury. And obviously that was a worse injury, but the fear around that, and not, because I didn't know, this was
Yeah.
before I probably hurt myself more by not moving and not doing things because I was so afraid. I was afraid of the pain. I was afraid of hurting. Now, knowing what I know, it was frustrating that I was injured, but I was like, all right, these are all the things I can do. It's going to get better. If it hurts, it's okay. Like, this is what I should expect week to week, month to month. Like, I have milestones in my mind. And I was like, wow, I wish I could give this. That's like my goal now, to give that kind of empowerment to all my clients. Like, if you're injured, this is what to expect. Know it's going to be okay. Know the body's so resilient. There's so many, because no matter what the injury is, you can typically always do something.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So 10 weeks recovery, you were diligent about it. You listened to your body. You didn't push it because you know what's up. And even though you were heading into this competition, which you all were in the intermediate division,
Yep.
which was still tough. Maysa told me the workouts, called me one night freaking out about the workouts. We talked about them. We planned them out. And it was a difficult competition in terms of movements, but not being able to necessarily, I hate saying this, but practice those specific things leading up to it. How'd you do?
Honestly, I surprised myself and I did better in every single event than anticipated. Obviously, I'm not fitness wise where I would like to be, but all things considered, I exceeded all my expectations. And I think, like we said, in the last 10 weeks, I can count on one hand the number of times I've gone below parallel. And there was lots of squats in this competition. And I think just I trusted the process of, I did a ton of knee stability. I did all the things I needed to do. I took the time off I needed to take off that. And then I paced myself. Like, I didn't do anything stupid in the competition. I did what I thought I was able to do. And we did well. I was like, my knee held up. So I think it was also one of the things I was actually most worried about. There was toes to bar, and swinging for a long time was really hard on the knee, not from the range of motion, just like the jerkiness. So I had done toes to bar twice ever in the last 3 months leading up to the competition, and we had to do 30. And that was our best event. And we finished the toes to bar faster than anyone in our heat. And I think I just trusted, like, if I continue working on pulling, I continue working on, postural endurance, it'll be ready when it needs to be. So that was really cool. So an injury is not the end of the world, and you can trust that you won't lose all your fitness because you don't do a specific movement for a couple months. And I actually, there was a max complex in it that had ended with a front squat. It was like a couple cleans, and I was worried about the front squat because I hadn't squatted, and I hit 10 pounds heavier than I expected to hit at my best.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So see, y'all, you don't lose all your strength in 10 weeks.
Yeah. And so it still has a little ways to go. I need a little more stability. There's thankfully no like box jump overs, so no pivoting. But besides that, yeah, it was really reassuring that the process works.
Yeah. Side note, and you're mentioning toes to bar and toe to rings. I don't think people realize like that's a big difference between those two movements. Where in toe to bar, it's really difficult to keep your legs straight and locked out. Where in toes to rings, you can.
Yeah. Flexible. So on a toes to bar, like, my hamstrings can't keep my legs really straight. And then also on the way down, you have to kick down. You can't
Right.
on a bar, you'll swing a ton. So yeah, it was really interesting. And in the competition was also very interesting is the bars were very high. So you had to climb a J hook, and then I jumped from the J hook to the bar because it was so high.
You're short.
And so it was also like just I've never done a toes to bar where I dead hung and then kipped. I've always jumped into it. So we kind of had to like adjust on the fly. And it was cool. I was like, oh, my knee's working the way it should because I can figure this out in middle of out and not freak out. So that was cool.
I love it. I love it. Anything else going on with you?
No, just honestly so sore recovering.
Yeah, eating a lot of food. Masa's on the new stacked nutrition plan, trying to get jacked as hell. So if you don't mind me sharing this, I'm just going to share it. Sorry, deal with it. Okay. Maysa said that she's 120 pounds right now. Her goal is, you want to weigh 135 by when?
I don't have a timeline, but I honestly think it could happen in like 3 or 4 months. A pound a week. That's it. I am being consistent, and I am never consistent about nutrition. So I think with consistency, we'll see a lot of change, but who knows? I'm fine. I'm trusting the process.
My goal is half a pound a week, so that we can maintain our leanness and agility and keep pushing the muscle mass. So
I also think, I will say that what contributes is I haven't been able to squat or go below parallel. So I've lost a lot of, I think, lower body muscle mass, just not the reality. I've been injured. So I'm a lot lighter. And now that this competition was great to show me, okay, I can start loading my legs a lot more. So hopefully a lot of that comes back, because I probably was 5 to 10 pounds heavier 10 weeks ago. So some of that will ramp up too as I can train the way I was before.
I love it. All right, y'all. Hope you enjoyed this. And we'll do all the promos in the beginning, but check us out, stackedcoaching.com if you're interested in virtual coaching and virtual programming. We got our wonderful and knowledgeable coach here, Maysa Hannawi.
Yeah, that was great.
Hannawi with IBX and Stacked Coaching. So talk to y'all soon. Bye.